I'm happy to be here. Sorry I missed last Rosh Hodesh. I had COVID, so Jenna stepped in, and now I'm healthy, and I'm glad that that's over. Um, at least until the next time that it happens to me. But yeah, stay healthy out there, everyone. Okay, so here we are, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. This is month one, everyone. Nisan is month one. For those Hebrew calendar geeks like me, you know that Rosh Hashanah is actually not the first, Tishrei is not the first month, it's actually the middle of the year, and that Nisan is the first month. And that corresponds with the teaching that we have from the greatest book club of all time, the Torah. In the chapter in Exodus 12:2 is actually when we get the first commandment as a Jewish people from the divine, from God. And the commandment is to mark the first month of the year, Nisan, and we do that by the new moon and all the moons thereafter. And that's what it says to do. So here we are marking the first month and following along with our commandments. The commentators thereafter ask a little bit about why is this a commandment? And they talk a lot about the importance of recognizing that we are a free people, that we are no longer slaves in Egypt, and that it's important for us to own our own time. That's the difference between being a slave and a free person, is our own ownership of our sense of time. We get to decide when we do things versus someone deciding those things for us. So, Chodesh Tov, happy Nisan. You all, like me, were about to embark in probably one of the most spiritual times of the calendar. And for those of you who are coming every day to our sits, you know that the people who are going to come in for Nisan are chock full of metaphors about how we might move from Mitzrayim to freedom. And that it won't just stay in Nisan, it will go throughout ER, the month of healing, and the month after that for Shavuot. And so here we are, like time to turn the engine on for us to do some spiritual inquiry about how we might leave Egypt. Not all of us collectively, for sure, how our ancestors did, but also how we might show up as individuals to do that work as well. So I actually we're going to get to our sit, but I want to do something a little unusual that even for me, which is for everyone to reach out for a piece of paper and a pen that is likely within proximity to where you are. And if not, you're on your computer, so you can use your computer. And I'd like for us to just spend a couple of moments for personal reflection before we drop into our sit, so we can let all the thoughts that are going to pop up just be there so that we can, when we drop into our sit, we can experience rather than be in a thinking space. So Nisan, the first question, here we are. Nisan 5784. And the backdrop of this year is obviously everything that we've been experiencing for the past 6+ months. It's unlike other years, perhaps in our lifetime, about what it means to be Jewish as an individual, what we're seeing in our communities, how the world's responding to us, how we're responding to the world after everything that's unfolded since October 7th. So my first question to you is, what's coming up for you this Nisan? How is this Nisan different than other Nisans? Nisan, of course, the month where we become free. I'm going to keep us going on our journal questions, but these are ones that I hope that you sit with and I invite you to. How is this Nisan different than last year's Nisan or any other Nisans that you've been before? Passover is coming in 2 weeks. What feels different? Wherever you are in that question, I invite you to just pause and let it just be there. Hopefully some of your immediate, laser focused thinking thoughts have come out on the paper, we can let them be there. Second question is around this idea of Pharaoh. Pharaoh, obviously, a constraining person, put the Israelites into slavery. The story of Passover is becoming free from Pharaoh. And this idea that perhaps we all have personal pharaohs in our life, things that are constraining us, things that are holding us back. What is a personal pharaoh, or what is a pharaoh that's in your life right now? What is constraining you, your breath, your mind, your body, your soul, your heart? In our Passover story, we know that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. What is hardening your heart? Or what is hardening your Pharaoh's heart? Here's my last question before we drop into our sit. Again, you're not meant to be done with your questions. They're just meant to be flashes of getting some thoughts down. My last question to you. In an unbelievable world where you were able to move from the most constricted version of yourself to the biggest expression of freedom, either beginning with Passover or going all the way into the summer towards Shavuot while we count the Omer. If you're really able to do this, what are you leaving behind in Mitzrayim? What are you leaving behind this year as we begin to embark our freedom journey? Okay, my friends, time for us to put our pens down. Put your paper down. Ground your feet to the floor. Find your seat. Find your spine. Place your head above your shoulders. Allow your eyes to close. Inhale, shoulders to your ears. Exhale them down your back. Big audible breath out. Inhaling, shoulders to ears. Exhale, audible breath out. Feel free to shake your hands and your arms, move your neck. And let's do that one more time. Inhaling, shoulders to ears, exhaling it down. Big audible breath. And starting to settle into our sit today. Keeping your body and mind, see where you can bring your breath to create a little more freedom and space. Your legs, your chest, your throat, shoulders, your tongue from the roof of your mouth. Let's place our attention on our hearts and our souls. With the awareness of all the things we know that are swirling, the thoughts we had from our questions, what's true in our lives. Let's just bring some awareness to our souls, our hearts. And I invite you to use your exhale as an opportunity to soften your heart. This Nissan is different than other Nissans. That's just true. There's so much to think and to say and to analyze and to discuss and to understand. And we're all going to do that this work this month and certainly in our Seders. Something that I've been sitting with as an anchor for myself for all that's swirling is this line from Exodus 14 that says the Israelites entered the sea on dry land. They've gone through slavery. They had to be convinced to become free. That takes an unbelievable amount of courage. the plagues, running away, leaving behind their possessions, rushing out. They get to the water, Pharaoh's behind them, and there's a sea in front. How scary is that? And they step forward, and there's dry land. Whatever's going on for you or us right now, let's stay present in continuing to move forward and trust that there's dry land for us. Inhaling, exhaling, softening our heart. Inhaling, exhaling, standing firmly on dry land. As we begin to close our sit today, I want to invite you to think of the people that are around you, leaving Egypt with you. Imagine all 165 people here live doing that work alongside you. Imagine looking around and seeing all of us together standing on dry land. Take a couple of last breaths, giving yourself anything that you need in this moment. When you're ready, you can allow your eyes to open, come back to the screen, maybe catch someone's eyes in one of the bubbles, give them a little smile. We're all in our own personal Zoom boxes, wherever we are in the world, but Jewish wisdom is a practice that's part of a collective. So, and these sits, and especially these times, want us to just remember that we're part of a collective together. Hodesh Tov, happy Nisan, excited to start the journey together.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit with Sarah in just a minute. And before we do that, we'll have now an opportunity for those who are remembering loved ones or others to recite Kaddish. We're going to put the text of the Mourner's Kaddish up on the screen. Thank you, Jet, who's holding down the fort for us. And in the chat, if you'd like to put in the names of anyone who you're holding in heart or mind today, as we're remembering those we've lost. Feel welcome to do that in the chat as well while we recite Mourner's Kaddish. And you're welcome to unmute and join me. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shmei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'alma divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei b'chayechon u'yomechon v'chayei b'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam le'olam yitbarach v'yishtalach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'ale v'yithalal shmei Kudsham La'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiram da'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama baba min shemaya l'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Yoseh shalom v'rama hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen.
Amen. Right.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, so we'll bring Sarah back here if you need to leave us. So wish you tzitchem l'shalom, farewell. I hope you'll be back soon. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same channel. And in the meantime, here we go. And so Sarah's back. As always, Sarah, it's always such a pleasure to experience your teaching and your practice. And I was thinking about these questions that you invited us into, and I'd love to hear from folks in the chat if anyone would like to share a little bit about some of the responses or things that come up for you. Thank you. Oh, perfect. Okay, you beat me to it. Right, what's different about this Nissan, as we're starting this new month, what your personal Pharaoh might be, what's hardening your heart, what are you leaving behind? For those that do listen to my podcast, I just wrote a next week's episode is the last one before Pesach, and really dealing with some similar questions about, I think a lot of people are really, approaching this. I know I am approaching this Pesach with a little bit of like trepidation of, like fear. What's going to happen at the Seder? What's it going to be like to gather? That there's so many levels on which that's a challenge. And so I'm really curious to hear from folks who are with us today, what's coming up for you. And so I wonder if if you're able to share a little bit of your own, how you're experiencing this year differently, which also is like the first year you had a kid, like right at the same time as all of this was unfolding, right? And so your first child. So I'm really I'd love to invite you to reflect on that, and others who may want to in the chat share what's on your mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who I sit with regularly. I know I was away from parental leave and being sick, but been doing this now, I think, for like 2 or 3 years on Rosh Hodesh. And I'm not a rabbi or a therapist or an MSW. So I also try not to pretend to come in with like grand wisdom that I could just like descend on people. My approach to my teaching is mostly just to allow us to be human and vulnerable and to feel all of our feelings and allow it to be okay, and that's a normal human experience. So today I was like, my gosh, what am I even going to say? Like, how do you even approach what is going on in the world and in the Jewish world with the backdrop of Passover? It's so complex. And there's no doubt about it, there's going to be so many deep thinkers that are going to help us move through this time. So, and I'm going to be looking to them. What I'm feeling is just sadness and grief, and recognizing that there's people who are not free, who are like 1 degree of separation from me, and there's people who are dying and starving and part of a mess. And I've noticed myself having a hardened heart, and I am, even when I soften it, it gets hard again. It's like there's callus around it. And what is it going to take in order for when this horrible war ends, what's after? Is it going to be wandering for 40 years, lost as humanity with Jewish people? I don't know. But it's going to require an unbelievable amount of courage, an unbelievable amount of compassion and love and tshuva, and just to the deep depths of humanity in our souls to move forward towards any kind of peace and compassion and love. And so with all of that, I just want to go into a hole and dig and stop time and not address Passover, because it's so many things. But of course, that's not possible. That's not the way to go. That's not the kind of person I want to be. And so I pulled this text out as what an inspiration for me, and hopefully for all of you, with the idea of just go forward, just go into it. You might not get all the theory or all the things, but if we can just remember to feel. And this line of text that even the Israelites who were up against the water and they had to go into the sea, and when they went there, it was dry land and they were able to walk, I think is a metaphor for, at least for me, how I hope to place my heart in this time moving forward as we begin Nisan, to just go forward with all the feelings that are going to come up, all the hard conversations that are going to have, all the things that where I feel hard and stuck and can't breathe and angry and mad and sad and devastated, and just go forward and allow myself to feel all of them, knowing that I'm having a human experience and ultimately am supported by Earth.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, thank you. Really, it's very honest and beautiful the way you just put all of that. And there's a great conversation that's opening up that I can see in the chat here of just
But
talking about our inner pharaohs and being our own pharaohs, and the image you just gave of like, how do we move from being that pharaoh to being Nachshon, right? The one who takes the first step into the sea. One thing I would just remind us also that there's probably also a lesson in it doesn't all happen at the same time. The Nachshon story, the sea story, happens a week later, right? It happens on the 7th day of Pesach, and that we don't have to do it all at once. Though there's also there is that stepping, we don't tell a story about Nachshon or anybody else as being the one who steps out of Egypt. But of course, we also have a tradition of that, according to one interpretation, only 20%, only 1/5 of the Jews, of the Israelites who were in Egypt actually left. That most of them, overcome by inertia, or whatever, stayed, couldn't leave. and which is a fascinating midrash.
Couldn't
And
let
so,
you,
what is it? We
or you
couldn't or wouldn't, yeah,
I mean, if
yeah,
you're living a life, whether or not it's constrained or not, to imagine if you never had freedom, to imagine what might come from it.
right,
So it takes courage to do that.
absolutely, right,
Um,
absolutely.
I'm imagining that every Jewish person is going to need to go through some sort of inner dialogue with themselves. However, you land politically in the total utter mess that has resulted, that there's going to need to be an undoing of lots of different feelings and emotions. We're still in it though.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I don't, like I said, I don't, I'm signed up to teach Rosh Hodesh meditation, but I don't have an answer. It's time.
yeah,
I just know that I'm devastated. My heart's broken. I'm sad. And I have this backdrop of the month of Nisan to sit with. And it's the beginning of that journey of Nisan. And we put the website for At the Well there. And we have our moon manuals, which is like a guide to the Hebrew calendar month that has a lot of good questions in there too. And I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's just,
no, yeah, no,
um, we have 105 people here. That means that we probably have like at least 450 different interpretations of this time and what it means to us. And when we flip it on its head, where are we free? Where are we not free? Where are we hardening? Where are we softening? We're alone. We're together. I mean, all these really complex things that could swing with even just like 5 minutes meditation.
yeah, yeah,
That's why I
exactly.
want to start with writing. Um, like, why did I lead it this way? I just wanted us to give a chance to just like put all the thoughts down and then hopefully have a couple of minutes of relief, with our breath and practicing just using our breath as a tool.
Hmm.
I'm like constantly swirling, and I have to really work on finding a space for me to relax my body and my heart and my breath and remember that my shoulders are supposed to be with far distance from my ears.
Mm. Gives, and which lends some embodied meaning to the notion of being a stiff-necked people. When you're like
Just
this,
like
it's very
around
hard to move your neck, Yeah, to move the neck, you got to lower the
here, I wake up
shoulders.
in the morning, I'm like this, and I'm just like,
Hmm.
okay.
Hmm.
Also, Sarah, remember, I am free. I'm unbelievably free. I'm the freest version of all of my ancestors. No one that I'm named for has ever been as free as I am. Everyone in their lifetime has had some time where they have felt challenged by their Judaism, internally or externally. But there's neighbors that they might not want to tell them right away that they're Jewish. And sometimes when they did, and I'm going through that for myself in my own neighborhood, and still I am unbelievably free. And so I want to remember that, calm my nervous system down, be the best version of myself that I possibly can be, and try to create peace in my community and for my family so that it is not continuing cycles of violence in spaces that don't need that, because there's enough pain with what's going on around Israel and Gaza that it's not going to help Washington, D.C. neighborhood of Mount Pleasant if there's more of screaming and yelling in my neighborhood.
Hmm. Mm. A lot of wisdom there. Um,
Do we have anybody who has the answer for this Nissan? Because I want to
yeah,
think.
I think there's a lot of those. There's a lot of things happening in the chat. I'm trying to keep an eye on it, but a really lively conversation. Um, right, Nancy just chimed in. We are free, perhaps, but at the same time, we are dealing with realities we have only heard about from those who lived with them in the past. Right. Um, and and how some of this stuff shows up for us and lives within us. I've been reading Rebbe Tirza Firestone's book, Wounds into Wisdom, which if you haven't read it, I really recommend. And we're actually hoping Tirza's going to do some teaching with us next year about all of that. And about intergenerational Jewish trauma and how that gets, unlocked and reanimated in, from generation to generation. And when you're talking about, Sarah, how do we disrupt those cycles, right? Of when in fact there's trauma on top of historical trauma that's that gets epigenetically transmitted, and that is its own pharaoh, right? I think there's a real opportunity at Pesach, or an invitation, like, okay, how can we liberate each other, ourselves, from some of those cycles? I'll type in that somebody asked what the name of the book was.
Yes, and I think it's also, for me, it's I run a wellness company inspired by Jewish wisdom. So and I was on parental leave, coming back from parental leave when October 7th happened. So we've been, every day wrestling with how do we teach about the present moment and Jewish wisdom with what's going on. We just had 2 months of Adar. Wow, that was an interesting spiritual path. But what we kept coming back to when we looked at wisdom from Adar from previous times in Jewish history that have been constraining is that it's not about necessarily joy, it's just about being present with your feelings, and that makes you closer to God. And I've been really loving that wisdom, and I'm wanting to bring that into Nissan too, that it's just about remembering to feel, while also remembering that Judaism has boundaries around time. So if you're only in your grief all the time, perhaps what boundaries can you put around it so that you have some relief and not afraid to go into it, but also remembering that there's other feelings that could happen, that we're free and we should be engaging in things, and also making sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And when it comes to trauma, I don't think there's a person on planet Earth right now that has not either been past trauma from their ancestors, or we're about to be experiencing it as, millennial here, reminding us that climate change is real, and that it's a real thing for humans to have trauma. So I want to invite us to be thinking about that trauma as it relates to what Jewish trauma we've been past and how that might impact our health, which I think is serious. And I want to heal our guts, not keep making fun of our anxiety or stomach issues as a Jewish trait, but recognize that that's actually been traumatic events that have caused indigestion. That's not a funny thing. It's something we should be working on together. And remember that matzah is the bread of affliction. So take it easy with the matzah cheese sandwiches. But also really remember that with those things comes resilience and strength. And it has taught us to be compassionate and strong. And so, and I know that Tirza goes into some of that as well, but as we're talking to each other at our seders, let's get the full story here of the trauma, the pain, the sadness that's going on, and the things that come from it too, the strength, the resilience, the commitment to joy, the commitment to bring peace, the commitment to work on hard things, that we're here, that I'm here. How is that possible, given the story of my ancestors, that I am here? And so it's all of it. It's all of it.
Yeah. There was one question here from Irene that I just want to hold up as, those who won't be able to be with others, right, for Pesach, and what to do this year, and I think, first of all, having a community like this where you can be with other people. We're not going to be live during the Seder. In fact, the week of Pesach will we'll certainly be closed. We'll certainly be off the day of the Seder, but I think forming any kind of connections through places like this, and finding, thank God we have technological means that a lot of us discovered, especially in 2020, for connecting with each other, and connecting in that way. And I think, even without those, knowing, perhaps there's some comfort to take in the notion that, even in the Talmud, they talk about, if you're if you have children at the Seder, the children should ask questions. And if you don't have children, then, if you're just two people, one should ask, the other questions. And if you're just sitting by yourself, you still have to ask yourself a question, right? To start the Seder. So even then, there was an awareness that not everybody, for whatever reasons, is going to be able to gather with other people. But one of the things that I've really learned from this, the whole phenomenon of this sit that's still existing 4 years later and going strong, is there's something real about the notion of spiritual community, and just knowing that there are tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of other people who are gathering to engage with this story, to celebrate this holiday together, is a really, really wonderful and huge thing. So even that, on that level, that awareness perhaps can be helpful. So there's a lot more for us to do, clearly. Well, good thing we've got 2 weeks to get ready for Pesach. Carrie, you always help to frame the month for us and tee it up in such a nice way. So thank you. And encourage everybody to go to At the Wells website and use their materials. We will be back tomorrow, same time and same channel. And until then, wish everybody a Hodesh Tov, a good new month of Nisan. And thanks again to Sarah and everybody for being here.
Hodesh Tov, everyone.